1. A drop that behaves like it has memory. At first glance, a drop of liquid seems simple. It responds to gravity, spreads out, disappears. But in certain physics experiments, something strange happens. A droplet placed on a vibrating surface can start to bounce across it. And that's not all. Each bounce creates waves on the surface of the liquid. Those waves then influence the droplet's next movement. As a result, the droplet begins to move in a way that depends on its previous trajectories. In other words, its motion becomes partly dependent on its history. This phenomenon is called a pilot wave system. It doesn't mean the droplet has memory like a living being, but the physical system starts behaving as if it is taking the past into account. Interestingly, some scientists have even used this effect as an analogy for interpretations of quantum mechanics, because it shows that even simple systems can hide complex, history-dependent behavior. So a water droplet may be far less random than it appears at first glance. 2. This animal can die and come back years later. There are organisms that don't just survive extreme conditions. They completely shut down life itself. One example is tardigrades, also known as water bears. When conditions become extreme, no water, no oxygen, extreme temperatures, they enter a state called cryptobiosis. Their bodies lose almost all water. Their metabolism drops to nearly zero. To all appearances, they are dead. But that's not the end. In this state, they can survive for years, and potentially much longer if conditions remain stable. And when water returns, they come back to life within hours. Even more impressively, tardigrades can survive radiation that would kill most other organisms. They can even survive the vacuum of space. This makes them one of the most resilient known forms of life on Earth, as if life can be paused, waiting for better conditions. 3. You are not the first to make your decisions. It feels like you consciously make decisions. First you think, then you act. But neuroscience experiments suggest something strange. The brain begins preparing a decision several seconds before you become aware of making it. In studies measuring brain activity and physical movement, researchers found that neural signals indicating a choice appear before the person reports conscious awareness of deciding, which raises a question: who is actually making the decision? It doesn't necessarily mean free will doesn't exist, but rather that consciousness might be the final step in the process, not the starting point. The brain first processes information, evaluates options, and sets a direction. Only then do you become aware of it as, I want to do this. It changes how we think about thinking itself, because consciousness may not be the driver. It might just be observing decisions already formed in the background. 4. A material that is both liquid and solid at the same time. Most materials are straightforward. They are either solid or liquid. But there is a class of materials that breaks this rule. They are called non-Newtonian fluids. One of the most famous examples is a mixture of cornstarch and water. If you slowly place your hand into it, it behaves like a liquid. But if you hit it quickly, it becomes hard, like a solid. That's why you can actually run across it for a brief moment. Under sudden pressure, the particles lock together and form a temporary rigid structure. When the pressure disappears, the material returns to a fluid state. It's completely unintuitive, because the material doesn't have one fixed property. It changes depending on how you interact with it. These substances also exist in nature and biology, such as in certain proteins and blood plasma. It shows that the line between solid and liquid is not always as clear as we learn in school. 5. A computer nearly started a nuclear war. During the Cold War, tensions between superpowers were extremely high. Early warning systems were designed to detect missile attacks. But in 1983, a very dangerous situation occurred. A Soviet system reported a launch of nuclear missiles from the United States. The alert indicated a full-scale nuclear attack. According to protocol, an immediate response should have followed. But one man, the duty officer, Stanislav Petrov, felt something was wrong. The system reported only a small number of missiles, which didn't match the pattern of a real attack. Instead of reporting a counterstrike, he chose not to trust the computer. It turned out the system was wrong. The false alarm was caused by sunlight reflecting off clouds. His decision may have literally prevented a global nuclear war. It remains one of the most famous cases of a human saving the world by ignoring technology.